Roll for Crit is made possible thanks to the support of viewers like you and our patrons on our Patreon page.
You can become a patron for just $1 a month at patreon.com/rollforcrit.
Welcome to Roll for Crit. Today we are lucky to be joined by game designer Bruno, who may have designed a game you maybe heard of, 7th Continent. One we think is all right, just made our list of best favorite games, and is also the co-designer of 7th Citadel, which is on Kickstarter right now. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me on the show. We're
so excited about this because, like we said, 7th Continent, we both love the game. It made our lists for both that year and as well as just games our 20 best games that we've overall enjoyed. And, you know what? Why don't we start if somehow people have not heard about that yet, what is 7th Continent and, leading into it, 7th Citadel?
Well, we designed 7th Continent from 2013 with my associate Ludovic Rodi, who also is a game designer, co-designer of the game. And it's an exploration and survival board game. You can play it solo or with up to 4 players as a team. And you play the role of cursed explorers at the beginning of the 20th century. So you come back from the first expedition to this newly discovered continent. You come home, then you realize you've been cursed, so you need to go back to try to find a way to get rid of one of these curses that is on you. And the game is exploration because you unveil the board game as you play using numbered cards, just like the chapters in books where you are the hero, choose your own adventure books. So you start on one terrain card that tells you if you go north, pick card 142, for instance. If you go east, take card 86. And then you take the card with that number, you put it in play, and the board starts to become bigger and bigger and bigger. And as you know, it extends up to a couple of square meters when it's all set, with hundreds of events to face, creatures to fight. And the game is about performing actions. It's kind of role-playing game in the sense of everybody decide to perform an action, do something. So, for instance, I would say, I want to look under this rock, and then someone else is going to perform another action. But it's very free the way you decide who performs the actions. And there are many, many actions, but they all work the same way. So that's the general idea of the game. And it takes we mentioned 1,000 minutes, more or less, to get rid of this curse. But there is a saving system, just like in video games, that allows you to put the game away for dinner, for instance. So it takes 20 seconds to put things together, and then after dinner you can reload your game and keep on your journey on the 7th Continent.
Very important. You're going to need to take some dinner breaks.
So some people ask, how can I play 1,000 minutes in a row? Some people do it. Some people play like for 8-9 hours in a row because it's this type of game, just like Heroes of Might and Magic back in the days, where it's a quiet game, so you play something and then you want to find out, let's just see what's behind this river. And then you are at the river and you want to keep going, let's see this forest, and then let's see those mountains, and you keep playing and playing, and you think you've played for 1 hour and it's already been 5 or 6 hours. So
yeah, I've definitely fallen prey to that. I don't think I've done a full 8 hours. I have not been able to do that, but it's definitely the kind of game because it allows you to also not feel guilty about exploring either, which has been very nice for Jonathan and me, who tend to like to look under every rock.
And yet the game gives you objectives, and you should follow the clues that are given if you don't want to die starving somewhere, because if you act like a tourist and you want to see everything at once, it's not that efficient in terms of winning the game, actually. So you have to keep in mind that don't be a tourist. Feel like as if you were on the continent, starving, and you have limited time to do what's expected from you. And that's one of the reasons to focus on the goals that we give you.
Yeah, I think I also don't know if I ever did a full 8 hours, but there may have been one night where I maybe just didn't sleep and just played a lot of the 7th Continent. Obviously, it's been very, very successful. Everybody loves it. For a while, it was hard to find, and I know like copies were going for high prices online, and now it's a little bit easier to get your hands on it, I think. And you're following it up with, of course, the 7th Citadel, which is a standalone sequel. So
it's not a sequel, actually. It's a new game.
Right.
It's a new universe. So Seventh Continent was about exploration in Cursed Continent, early 20s. 7th Citadel takes place in a post-apocalyptic medieval fantasy world that we have designed from scratch. There are no goblins or usual archetypes in this world. You play as slave gardeners who work for bad people fighting against worse people. So basically, you're in the middle of this war between the Celt Protectorate, which is an hegemonic city-state who rules over the empire, which is at war with the burrowers, giant worms that are digging underground tunnels to make the world collapse. And these worms are controlled by a single individual, but is nowhere to be found. And you are basically developing the weapons against these burrowers in the citadels, and these weapons are like monstrous plants designed by necro-druids who mixed druidic knowledge with dark magic. So when the game starts, you are a prisoner in this citadel, one of the citadels, the 7th Citadel actually. But the world is at the turning point, and after 70 years of war between those two factions, things are about to change, and this is where you come in, trying to escape first in the introductory scenario from the citadel, because it's collapsing, and then you will rediscover the world as it is now, because it has changed in several years, and you try to fight against a threat that is like a campaign mode split into scenarios, non-linear scenarios, and you lead the community of refugees. So there are lots of different stuff compared to 7th Continent that this new setup allowed us to do, or we wanted to try new directions, and that's all it's about. So it takes all the exploration part of 7th Continent. So for those who played 7th Continent, it's going to be familiar when it comes to looking at hidden numbers on terrain cards, or using plants that are drawn on the cards to use their effect, because you know that this plant can heal you, or you can use it for something else. But the survival aspect, which basically is the die and retries, the craft stuff, the hunt stuff, are gone, and now it's more about adventure. So for instance, now you have the world is populated, so you can talk to people. So we've designed a dialogue book, just like it looks like this. It's like a choose your own adventure game book, in which you have to choose when you speak to someone what you are going to tell to that people, and depending on what you say, the outcome will change. And you could choose to be authoritative or diplomatic or make jokes, for instance, and then the consequences obviously will be different depending on your choice. And unlike those video games like Fallout, where you can choose and try 10 times the same answer, here the system is made so when you say something, it's like basically you cannot go back and you cannot undo what you said unless you use a magic trick, because you can use magic to rewind and go back in time. I didn't say that.
Whoa, scoop.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting new stuff. Another difference is that now each player has their own action deck. So it's more about each character being unique with his own skills. So everybody starts with an action deck of 15 cards. Every card is slightly different depending on whether you play a young teenager or an elder or a woman or a man, etc. And then you add to these 15 cards 5 specific skills that you choose freely. So you could choose to focus on magic stuff, or you could choose to mix several stuff to know how to lockpick, for instance, or to cast a force field, or to be more proficient with a sword. That's up to you. So you can build your character freely, and this goes on during the game, where you can purchase new advanced skills and stuff like that. We wanted the character to feel more personal than 7th Continent. So it's still cooperative, but now it's more about being someone in the team, rather than acting together all the time and doing stuff together.
Now, you've mentioned a bunch of these changes you've made, and obviously some of them are, as you said, to make sense of the theming. You're not in a survival game anymore. You're in the post-apocalyptic medieval. But are there any changes you made because of maybe critiques or things you regret about 7th Con? Like you thought, like, that didn't work out well, so hopefully this is the fix.
Well, a couple of things. First, when we design games, we try to explore new horizons. Even for us, it's more interesting and challenging to bring new stuff to the game than doing always the same stuff. So this was something we wanted to do. The universe being different, as you said, it may imply changes. For instance, now there is food in the world. You don't have to. You can't find apples or whatever vegetable or fruits they have in this world. You can eat quite easily. So there was no meaning to keep the hunt aspect like as importantly as it is in Seventh Continent. And if you want to craft your own chainmail, like one chain at a time, it's going to take you like weeks. So it's hard to do. So we decide to go for gear that is already, you find it or you steal it or you gain it, rather than crafting your stuff because it's more thematic. Apart from that, of course, there were some things that people didn't like or could be improved in Seventh Continent. The fact that people felt like acting always as a group was one of them. So this is something that we wanted also as players to experience, how to split this. Reason we didn't do it in Seventh Continent is because it asks to have a lot of cards for this specific purpose. And at the time, back in 2013 or 15, when the first Kickstarter went live, we tried to be reasonable, and we said, no, we need to be reasonable. But now we are like, who cares? let's put 100 more cards in the game. So the collector's edition right now on Kickstarter, compared to Seventh Continent, and there are stretch goals coming we have, I guess, 6 days left, is already more than 1,000 cards in the base box. So it's already more than Seventh Continent collector edition. And we are not at the end of our Kickstarter, so hopefully more, because we like to just be like with a lot of stuff, lot of surprises and Easter eggs and content in it. So it's a mix of all those things that made us change some gameplay elements, and we have other new stuff in it. As I said, you lead a community of refugees, so now you will be able in the game to build buildings like you are building a city. This part of the game is between 2 sessions. As I said before, the game is now split into scenarios. And when you are done with a scenario, or it's time to go back to the Citadel because your health is so low, now you have life points. So when your life points are very low before falling unconscious, you must go back to the Citadel to basically heal your wounds and prepare for the next scenario. When you do that, it means there's a milestone, meaning you can play 2 hours and then you have achieved what you were expected to do by the scenarios, then you go back. This is something that didn't exist in Seventh Continent. That's why some people played 8 hours in a row, because there were no reason to say, okay, we should go back to camp because there was no camp. But now you have this place, and in terms of game design, it allows us to do a lot of stuff. So for instance, we can have missions that ask you to bring something to the Citadel. In Seventh Continent, we couldn't do that because you didn't have your camp, so there was no place for you to say, bring this to basically nowhere, because there's nowhere to bring this stuff.
Right.
So this is something that allows us to do new stuff. And this Citadel is a place where you will handle buildings, etc. And it's represented by, this is a prototype version with it's an 8-page document like this, with lots of information on it. And in this document, one of the sheets that is important is what we call the destiny page. So for those who have, don't know if it's better, yes, better like this. For those who've played Final Fantasy back in the days, you will recognize a kind of tree of, this is where you spend your experience points. We call them hope, because hope is something you will gain during the game. It's a lot about building a new world and getting hope for people, etc. In this, you will start at the center, and then you are able to check boxes, and each boxes represents a special bonus that you can get. One of them can be to purchase new advanced skills or new reflex skills that will occur when you draw them, not when you have them in hand. And one of these box allows you to build buildings. So there are 28 buildings at the start of when the game starts. And when you check a box, when all boxes are checked, the building is built, and then you have abilities. So for instance, if I take the House of Worship, it allows you to gain hope cards when you go on your journey. So it's like experience points, but you can use them also to do other stuff. And the Bass, for instance, allows you to unblock a companion card. Lots of useful effects, but you have to build the buildings first.
I'm very excited for that. I think I always tell John how much I want to just build up a base in an RPG and stuff. So that kind of system is totally up my alley.
And one other thing is you will be able to send emissaries to explore the world on your behalf. And this is where what we call the world map comes into play. So when you get this in the game, it's a prototype version. It's in French, but people will figure out. So it's a laminated world map of the Kale Protectorate before it became the collapsing lands. So it's a map it's a 70-year-old map. So it's super obsolete because the world has changed because of the war between the Borrowers and the Kale Protectorate. So you start with this, and this will give you the name of the city-states and places of interest. So when a mission mentions, oh, you should go to this, this guy used to live in this city, now you know where it is on the map and you know where you are. So you know, okay, we should head southeast or northwest because it helps you understand. But maybe the city in question has been totally destroyed and doesn't exist anymore. Or maybe now there's a rift that provides you to prohibits from you to go in that direction. You have to find out. And in order to find out, you will be able, thanks to your emissaries, to insert cards like this one. So basically, the game will tell you where it goes, and you could now, thanks to your emissaries, you could put the card in it, and now you have a better vision of how the world is without going by yourself to see.
Oh, cool.
So they'll update the map for you. That's really cool.
The map is going to be updated based on people you send there to explore on your behalf. And of course, because we are nasty people, sometimes instead of having a new piece of information, you will have a card saying, okay, your emissaries have disappeared mysteriously. You need to go there by yourself, one Terran card at a time, to find out if they are drunk at the local tavern or if they've been captured by someone who wants them dead. So
yeah,
lots of
I
tricks.
expected as much.
You can imagine if you've played 7th Continent, the kind of tricks we have in mind for that part as well.
So do you have, is there a master map somewhere that's a real official current layout of the world, or that you just have for reference to work off of, or is it all just in those cards and you experiment with it?
No, you will discover the new map using these cards, but you always have on your Citadel leaflet the same map that you can put notes on, so you can write, okay, we find this guy here, we find this place here. So this is you can keep this one to take notes. And the other one will each cards from the you put in the laminated world map, for instance, will allow you to start scenarios from new places. So basically, it's just like if you had a map of the United States, and you always start in New York, but then at one point you will be able to start your mission in Dallas or in Seattle. And if you need to go to Los Angeles, you will be happy to start at Seattle rather than New York, because it's much closer and it will allow you to go there much more quickly. So it's both new information about the state of the world, and at the same time it's new point of interest, and some of them have really useful benefits for you.
Thank you for dumbing it down for us Americans so we can figure that out.
Is it possible, let's say, like you said, the scenario if our emissaries disappeared, so we went in that direction, can you discover those map cards yourself to add to them, or will you be drawing them on the other map?
No. What you will discover is the actual state of the world. It's a zoomed version of this map with the weights now. So you will see that the world has changed. Just like you unveil the board in 7th Continent, you will still unveil a gigantic board of terrain cards. So you will have an idea of the way it looks now, because you have a more focused vision of the space. But this gigantic map will allow you to use stuff that you cannot use if you haven't sent your emissaries first.
And how much of the game, whether it relates to exploring the map or the dialogue systems, how much does the experience change from one player's session to another's? Will you generally encounter the same things but maybe in different orders, or could there be wildly different turns of events depending on what you decide to do?
Both, little of both. It's still an open world, so it's basically there are stuff you can do in different ways to achieve your goal. It's not like super linear, go there, do that. There are several ways to do things. And also, just like in 7th Continent, you have alternative cards for events. You have random events each time you move on. Even dialogues might change depending on things, such as what time of the hour it is or stuff like that. So we have many things that make the game replayable. But when it comes to just like when you read a choose your own adventure game book, you have several ways to get to the end, and you won't experience the same thing every time. But the end, or usually there is one or two possible endings. It's the same kind of thing here. So basically, since you are able to make decision and choose, you will not likely experience the same game 2 times in a row. And since most of those bonuses are unlocked by the destiny sheet, and it's unlikely you will be able to check all these cards, you will have to make decision. So if you want to focus on emissaries on the world maps, you have to check these boxes, but then you will not get advanced skills for your character, or not as much as you'd like to. If you go for, and there are other bonuses I didn't mention, such as the group proficiency, special cards you can get, reflex skills, changing your Citadel values to increase defense, production, etc. I cannot go into all the specifics here because it would take like too long, and it's fun for people to discover all that subtleties. But yes, just like in 7th Continent, you have many things that are going to occur that you might already have seen, but then you'll be surprised by how many you missed or just ignored, or stuff that we have hidden in the game. They are new. We don't talk to you about at all. And when you will find them, you will say, "Oh my God, yes, this guy was talking about that like 6 hours ago, and okay, that was all about, etc., etc." And we have also side quests, which are quite fun. Now you are able to keep track of your side quest using this part of the Citadel effect. You can basically say, okay, we did this 5th time, which wasn't possible in 7th Continent, to keep track of your side quests. So yes, I think there's a lot in here.
Yeah. I mean, that's if it's anything like 7th Continent, I'm sure there will be no shortage of content. And as you said, it already has more cards than that game did. I'm curious about the dialogue system, talking to NPCs. How difficult was that to write and to develop? Because, when you can choose how to say certain things, how many different branches are there? Was that a really tough thing to
Yeah, it's a big part of the job when it comes to game designing, because it has to work like in every case. And unlike video games, you cannot send a patch when there's something wrong. So you have to do it accurately the first time. Yeah. So it's a lot of work. It depends on the dialogue. There are dialogues where you will. We are not. The game is more narrative than 7th Continent was. Yet we are not one of these games when a player will spend like 10 minutes reading something on his own, like while other players are watching at the table. We use text, and especially dialogues when needed, because it's not we are not doing a book. We are doing a game in which there are narrative stuff. So dialogues, sometimes it will be like a monologue and you won't act. Basically, you will just listen to what the person has to say. And when it comes to discussing with the person, it can go up to many, many chapters because of all the interactions. I won't say too much not to spoil, but there are things that people really, when we demoed the introductory scenario a lot, and people were like, okay, what should we... I want to say that. I know it might be a mistake, but I really want to say it. And so people were like not knowing what they should say because they want to say something, but they are not sure it's going to be the best thing to say at the moment.
And I'm just curious, will there be options that like you can only say this? Because you brought up Fallout, for example, and games like that, and the original ones would be like you need at least 40 intelligence, or you might fail.
Yes. So, for instance, I mentioned the Citadel values. I would say this: imagine you find a starving family, and you want to bring them to the Citadel to help you, basically, because the more refugees, the more people to work for you, etc. And they say, okay, but then you need to give us like 2 cards with the keyword provision, because they want to eat now. But for instance, you'll be only 1 card if your influence level is 7 or higher, because you are famous now, you're starting to be famous, so people are more likely to trust you, so they are more inclined to follow you, etc. Yes, Same goes for the dialogue system. There are stuff that you will be only able to do depending on the skills you have, or depending on the items you carry or the things you've done in the game. If you murdered someone's brother during a fight, it's likely you won't have the same choice that if you didn't. And if you have something to exchange, maybe you will have dialogue options that will be available that wouldn't be available if you hadn't. It's going to be dynamic. That's the whole purpose of it. What we like is choices and the feeling of freedom. We have to, at one point, to say you cannot do everything, just like in a role-playing game, but we try to make it as open as possible.
Yeah, I mean, we loved the original Seventh Continent. It sounds like, all those, everything you're saying about, more open and more narrative focused, all that stuff for me is like, that just sounds like a plus in every direction. So
yes, that's why we try to do. We try to improve every time we can. So
yeah, it sounds like you're on the right track for sure. Now, the 7th Citadel at the time when this video is going to come out just has a few days left on Kickstarter, and that's in its full Kickstarter edition. And then there is going to be a classic edition later at retail. Is that correct?
Yes. We don't say retail because we are the only one selling it. So it's 7th Continent is only sold in our online shop right now. So we call it the classic edition, not the retail edition. But apart from that, yes, correct. It's likely we have a collector's edition exclusive to Kickstarter, and then a classic edition without the stretch goals that you can purchase. We'll have it. It won't have the exclusive content from the Kickstarter, and you can purchase most of the stretch goals apart from it in a paid expansion. But yes, when the game is released, it will likely have a classic edition.
Yeah, well, if you are watching this right now at home and you have not played the 7th Continent, or you haven't had the chance to back this one, we definitely recommend that you take advantage of this opportunity. I mean, the original 7th Continent is a game that was well worth the money, and we've gotten many hours of enjoyment out of it. And it's very exciting to see this new project. Do you have any idea, anything else that you want to specifically highlight about the game, or plug, or let people know where they can follow you in the future if they're interested?
No, I just want to thank the already, let me check, because I have my brother, so I don't vex anyone. I think it's 1994 people who have already trusted us on Kickstarter.
That's a lot.
By backing this project. So thanks to them, because people not necessarily understand how important it is for us game designers to be able to build this kind of gigantic projects. I mean, gigantic by the content you have in it and by the time that needs to be spent on it. 7th Continent is overall 7-year experience for me and my associate Ludovic. So it's cool to have people trusting game designers to allow them to do that kind of like over dimension projects.
Yeah, it is.
So thanks to backers.
It's one of those times when definitely, Kickstarter has been really beneficial for designers and for us, because now we get to play these kinds of games that probably wouldn't have existed without it. And we're very excited to have the chance to talk to you today as a designer of it. It's a lot of fun. I'm sure there's plenty more we could discuss about the ins and outs of the design and everything like that. But we will have a link in the description to the Kickstarter page, so you can go ahead and check it out for yourself. And thank you once again, Bruno, for joining us and taking the time to talk to us about this. It's been a lot of fun. And
absolutely.
Bye, everybody. This has been Roll for Crit.
Bye.
Get an inspiration token by supporting us on Patreon and liking and subscribing to this channel.
If you support us on Patreon, you'll get access to our audio expansion podcast. It's so good.